Gaming Vault presents 15 video game expansion packs that are actually bigger than some games. We live in the age of DLC, of $5 cosmetics and loot boxes more likely to give out garbage than anything of substance. Still, there are some video game expansions that go beyond what has become the standard rate for game add-ons. These expansions are massive, adding whole new regions, questlines, factions, and stories to the worlds that they expand upon. Some are expansions that build upon a base game, while others are effectively standalone experiences that use the base game's engine. To help you find expansions big enough to be their own games, we've compiled a list of 15 of our favorites. Dying Light: The Following. Dying Light: The Following is a follow-up to Dying Light, a parkour zombie game about traversing a shattered cityscape to gather supplies and survive the night. While the game launched to tepid acclaim, the developers continued to support it and improve upon the initial experience. The Following then built further upon that support, adding in a new story about a group of survivors supposedly immune to the zombie virus, and a cult around their leader. The Following added a whole new area for players to explore, as well as a story even more compelling than the base game. The Witcher 3: Blood and Wine. For a game as vast and long as The Witcher 3, you wouldn't expect them to need to add much, having given so generously in the base game. Blood and Wine proves that CD Projekt Red isn't wasting any development time on a system of loot boxes. Blood and Wine adds another 20 or so hours to the game, adding in a whole new and distinct region, as well as a story as deep and engaging as that found in the base game. This is one expansion that is well worth the money, and offers an excellent dollar per hour ratio for a DLC. Fallout 4: Far Harbor. It should come as no surprise to anyone that a Fallout expansion would make this list. The trouble really came from choosing which one. Far Harbor is host to Fallout's largest landmass ever featured in a DLC, but land area isn't Far Harbor's only feature. It also engages a unique aesthetic, new faction quests, monsters, and dungeons. For any Fallout fan, this expansion is a must. Red Dead Redemption: Undead Nightmare. Part of the age of DLC is the cliché of the zombie expansion. When all other notions have been exploited, there's always room for zombies to enter the setting of a given game. Red Dead Redemption was one of the many games to cash in on this trope, but they did so with style, adding not just a minigame, but a full reimagining, in which the story of Red Dead Redemption is turned upside down by a zombie plague. Grand Theft Auto 4: Episodes from Liberty City. Featuring the Lost Brotherhood and the Ballad of Gay Tony, Episodes from Liberty City was an expansion pack, which combined GTA 4's episodic content. Both expansions featured new and different stories that ran parallel to GTA 4's main storyline, and explained a number of loose ends. If bought as a physical disc, this expansion could even be played as a standalone game that didn't require the original GTA 4 to be played. Destiny: The Taken King. Destiny may be a franchise famously short on content, but that really has more to do with its player base consuming the game more voraciously than any developer could be expected to keep up with. The Taken King added a new zone, a story that was far more put together than the vanilla game, an incredible raid, and a host of other content that could easily rival many standalone games. It was a shame that Destiny's next expansion, Rise of Iron, didn't live up to the Taken King standards. The Elder Scrolls 4: Oblivion: Shivering Isles. No list of massive expansions would be complete without a few entries from the Elder Scrolls series. Each of those games is truly massive, and their expansions are no different. Shivering Isles was particularly appealing because it shook up Oblivion's aesthetic, plunging players into the twin realms of Mania and Dementia with their own distinct styles. Shivering Isles added somewhere around 30 hours to Oblivion, adding more game time than many full games will ever even reach. Dark Souls: Artorias of the Abyss. In case getting through Dark Souls wasn't painful enough, Artorias of the Abyss added a whole new storyline, replete with monsters and bosses ready to tear you apart, or at the very least, maim you horribly. Artorias adds more content than many modern DLCs, and carries the story over to Dark Souls 2. Far Cry 3: Blood Dragon. Far Cry 3's Blood Dragon is perhaps the strangest entry on this list. Blood Dragon is a standalone cyber-operative game set to an 80s action movie aesthetic. Synths punctuate the background, cutscenes are rendered in 8-bit graphics, and laser dragons roam the island. Though it uses Far Cry 3's engine and mechanics, Blood Dragon could easily stand as its own game. Borderlands 2: Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep. Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep was a gem of an expansion from Borderlands 2. The expansion threw everything Borderlands 2 out the window and instead embraced an entirely different setting, taking place in the pen and paper D&D world of Tina's Fantasy. Like any Borderlands DLC, it was massive, filled with quests, bizarre and fascinating enemies, and more loot than anyone could ever need. Guild Wars 2: Heart of Thorns. The most recent full expansion for Guild Wars 2: Heart of Thorns added a new progression system, a new and distinct zone, profession specializations, a new class, guild halls, as well as new raids and dungeons. It has a volume of content any RPG would be happy to host, made even more extreme by being the base game's first expansion pack. The Elder Scrolls V: Skyrim: Dragonborn. The last expansion for Skyrim added a new island to explore, as well as a compelling nemesis to defeat. Dragonborn pitted players against the first of the Dragonborn, and in order to defeat that foe, players were given access to new abilities, new dungeons, new weapons, and even new dragon shouts that allowed them to tame enemies, including dragons, which the game then allowed players to ride. The riding mechanics were a bit underwhelming, but the rest of the expansion was excellent. Starcraft 2: Heart of the Swarm. Heart of the Swarm could easily be its own game. This Starcraft 2 expansion added a massive campaign, detailing the quest of Sarah Kerrigan to defeat her nemesis and discover the deeper evil stirring in the void. The campaign featured an evolution chamber that allowed players to shape the swarm based on their preferences, adapting the Zerg to their own distinct playstyle. It also added new units to StarCraft 2's multiplayer, bringing further depth into an already robust multiplayer system. Final Fantasy XIV: HEAVENSWARD. The HEAVENSWARD expansion for Final Fantasy Online increases the game's level cap, added flying as a mode of travel, and added new classes and races. As with many expansions for MMOs and RPGs, it's enough content to sell as its own game, but with a player base dedicated enough to play the amount needed to even access HEAVENSWARD, it's a reasonably sized expansion for its parent game. Dragon Age Origins: Awakening. Awakening was the only major expansion pack for Dragon Age Origins, arriving just on the cusp of modern, smaller system of DLC packs. Awakening told a story set months after Origins' conclusion, with the Darkspawn refusing to die out even after the death of their archdemon. The expansion added a whole new, if somewhat smaller game onto the back end of Dragon Age, and if it were made today, it would surely have been divided into a whole season pass. And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at Gaming Bolt, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.